And everybody that is joining us for the first time, welcome. My name is Andrew Holmes, and we do these 3 times a week. We do them on Monday, we do them on Wednesdays, and we do them Fridays. Mondays, Wednesdays, we try to cover questions, interesting topics as it relates to real estate investing. On Fridays, we try to do a real estate related story. So today, I think we have a few questions, and then we have a property that we're actually not one property. We have 2 properties that we're going to talk about house hacking. So having said that, let's get up and running. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is about a property which is a 2-unit versus a 3-unit. So Joe, if you can just turn that this way, and let's clear the screen. So we're going to go through the numbers on this, right? And this happens to be somebody that is from Mastery, and they were looking to buy their first rental property, first investment property. And my point to them was, hey, why don't you do a house hack? Relatively young people, kind of in their 24, 26, something like that, maybe 27, couple. And they're like, well, but I don't think we can afford a property that is that high. We want to buy something inexpensive, and that would be better for us. So I want to just kind of go through some numbers, and then I think this will be this will be an interesting example because this is such a real example. So they were going to buy a property in what I would consider like a C minus area, right? In one of the south suburbs, I think it's a C minus area, and their all-in cost on this property would have been $150,000, right? $150,000 all-in cost. The insurance on this property was going to be somewhere around 900. I think it's 910, but let's just use that. And then taxes on this property are 6950. Okay. So their payment every month on this property, if they had bought this property, so their options were kind of, one was buy a rental property, regular rental house, a single family house, right? They are in Mastery. Both of them have jobs. They're doing okay in their pros choice, but obviously they're like, hey, we want to start building wealth for the future. What do we do? Should we do a flip? Should we do a wholesale? I'm like, well, the thing is, if you have the right property that comes along, the question becomes is what's going to maximize for you in the future? What is the goal? So their goal initially, they're like, well, we just want to make money. I'm like, no, that's not good enough. The goal is, what is the goal? Would you be happy if this year you made an extra $40,000? They're like, of course, Andrew, that would be exciting. But I'm like, well, let me put it to you another way. Would you be happy if next year you made another $50,000? They're like, yeah, that'd be great. But I'm like, versus, would you be happy if 2 years from now you had net every single month 5,000 coming in? They're like, oh my God, that's 60,000 for the year, and that is cash flow income, which is cash flow for life, right? That would be even better because that is really what we want to do. So I'm like, if that's what you really want to do, then we're going to concentrate on finding a good property. Ideally, it should become a rental. If not, if you can maximize your profit by doing a wholesale, that's what you do. If you can maximize the property by doing a flip, then that's what you do. But flip and wholesale are basically, second tier things. The first tier always is we want to own the property and keep it and get to our $60,000 a year net cash flow, which is $5,000 a month. I'm like, because for you guys, by the time you're close to 28, 29, whatever, if they're 27, then 28, 29, whatever their age is, they're somewhere in their mid 20s. In 2 years, that's your goal should be that. Right? Don't worry about anything else because an extra $30,000-$40,000, believe me, it's going to get spent. It's going to go somewhere. So if you have to do it, then you do it. Otherwise, go towards cash flow. So they found property number 1, and here are the numbers with that particular property. So I want to give you those numbers, right? It's 150 purchase, 150 all-in costs. So purchase on this property was going to be 100,000. It's going to cost them 50,000 to rehab it, and their taxes on this were 69.50, and insurance was 900. So if I look at a payment on this property, their payment is going to be somewhere around. Their payment is going to be somewhere around 1839, right? 1839 is going to be their monthly payment a month. Now, every single month on this particular property, reasonably, they can make somewhere around about $2,200, $2,122, right? And so they're buying the property for 100. They're putting in 50 for rehab. This would be their property number one. On the back end, this property, I think, is going to be worth somewhere around 200,000, right? Somewhere around 200,000. So their question is, should we buy this property, right? Now, if you are looking at a property like this and you're like, well, does it have three things? Number one, does it have cash flow? So 1839 is the payment, 2,200. So what is that? That's 100, 200, 300, about $350, $400 is what you're making on a property like this, 350, somewhere around there, right? So the cash flow is a little bit less than I like. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that just because the cash flow is a little bit less, that we shouldn't be taking the property, but just one thing to consider about. Now, what about equity and what about DCR? In terms of equity in this particular property, they would have about 50K in equity, right? 50K in equity. So this is good, right? This is not bad. This is great. For their first investment, that's fantastic. They would literally not have to. So if I look at 200,000 appraised value, which I feel very confident about, right? 200,000 appraised value times, and I'm just doing this just to get a point across, not because hopefully this is 150. So what does that mean? If they're all in the deal for 150, right, and the property appraises for 200,000, they're going to be able to get $150,000 back. Now, are they going to have a little bit of money out of pocket for interest payments they've made, some other costs and stuff? Yes, they're going to have that out, but they are already considering that. That's okay, right? So they would have a phenomenal cash on cash. Their DCR numbers are going to be okay, right? This is going to be okay. I'm not going to get into this a lot in depth today. We'll talk about it during the 3-day, but this is going to be okay. So that's the choice number one. Is this a good property? I think it's a good enough property. Is this a great property? No, right? Not by our standards for Mastery, it's not a great property. Is this a home run deal? Absolutely not. But by most standards, right? Somebody's going to say, Andrew, I have, few $1,000 out of the pocket, and I get a property with equity, $50,000 equity. My cash flow is not quite 500, but still, man, this is great. I'm really happy with it. That's why I said that for us, it's good enough, right? Meaning that you should not pass up the property. I just think given their particular situation, I believe they can do better. So let's look at what's their choice. So I told them, I'm like, listen, I wouldn't do this. So I said, this particular property, if you have it, try to wholesale the property. And if you can get 10, 12K for it, for this particular property, get 10, 12,000 bucks and move it to somebody else, because I believe they have another couple of properties they're working on. And those are the ones we're going to talk about. Okay. So now they have two options, right? So option number one and option number two. So option number one is a 2-unit, and option number two is a 3-unit. Okay, UNIT, not TI. Okay, 3-unit. So the first property, the 2-unit property, they're buying it. They can buy it 235, and it's going to cost them 60,000. I just wanted to make sure my notes I have the right numbers. So 295, right? This would be what it would cost them on this particular property as far as what their total cost into the property is going to be. So 235 to buy it, and then about 45,000 or so to rehab it, and then other costs. So they're going to be somewhere around 295 all in the deal, right? Now, the second property that they have is a property that is 350. So the first property, they're just wholesaling that one out, right? So they're moving that one out. They didn't quite get, I don't think they got 10 or 12 for it. They ended up getting 9,500 or so, and that's what they did, right? They moved it out. And now, mind you, the reason why I told them is this. Now, if it was a solid C+ area, so you have A, aspirational, right, affluent, B, nice, next to the affluent, bread and butter, I call it, but it's more like an area which is right next to an affluent area. That's B. C is area with some challenges. D is a disaster, meaning too many challenges, too many challenging people doing a lot of challenging things, right? And high in crime. So that's basically a D. If there's too many C's in there, then it becomes a D. So this particular property that is in the C area, the C- area, I'm going to say, I had them pass it up because this is my opinion on it. Does it work? Yes. Does it have equity? Yes. Is the tenant pool the best over there? No. Should they be proud of building a portfolio over there? A lot of people say, well, I have 5 properties, 8 properties, 10 properties. I believe with the ability that these people have, they're very young, they have ability to buy a lot of good quality properties in good quality areas. And they happen to live, right now, they're renting in kind of the cool part of town, Oak Park sort of part of town. And I'm like, listen, if close to that, you can find a property, and you guys can do a house hack, it makes much more sense for you to do that rather than buying a property in the south suburbs. Nothing wrong buying a property in the south suburbs. There's a lot of hundreds of thousands of great properties. But the property that you're looking at, number one, it's a frame house, so that's a negative factor. Number two, it's a C- area, not even a solid C or a C+ area. If it's a solid C+ area, I think you should keep the property. But there's 2 or 3 negatives in the property that can it be kept? Yes. Should it be kept? Not if you have better choices. So in this case, what I'm having them do is I'm like, okay, dump that one, right? This particular property is 295, and right now they can only take on one project. They can't do both of these projects. We're not going to give them a loan out of Mastery for 2 projects going on at a time because they're just too new to this. If they were seasoned, it's different. On this particular property, here are the numbers. So on this one, they need somewhere around 38,000. Actually, the damage to the property here is relatively very little, right? It looks like a lot, but the previous owner had done plumbing, electrical, blah, blah. So it's basically coming in. It's kind of a short sale, which is going to auction. So we're going to help them make this happen. So in this property, it's 388, right? Now, for them, when they looked at the numbers between this one and this one, what they did is they're like, oh my God, this is something that they feel comfortable with. This, for them, is a little bit of a stretch because they're like, oh my God, it's almost going to be, maybe it may not be 388. What if it becomes 400,000? How are we going to do it? So I'm like, guys, hold on. Just take a second, take a breather, and let's look at the numbers. So let me kind of lay out the numbers for you. So we're going to include what is their payment on the property, what is their, versus what is the rental income on the property. So and this is assuming both the units are rented out in this case, this is assuming all the units are rented out in this case, 3 units rented out in this case, right? Because they're like, well, but you said we're going to do a house hack. I was like, I understand you're going to do a house hack, right? I'm like, number one, you will do a house hack, but in the long run, this is going to become an investment property. So let's look at, does this property make sense? And of the two, which one makes more sense, right? Now, on both of them, my suggestion was, hey, just put up $1,000 and then go through the attorney approval, and we'll deal with it at that time. So that's what they're doing. So here, the rent versus payment, interest, taxes, insurance, PITI, I should say. This should not be here. Okay, PITI. So the PITI on this particular property, let me just make sure I have all my numbers correct. Yeah, so PITI on this property is $3,100 on this particular property, right? Is your PITI, principal, interest, taxes, insurance. Now, this also includes a little bit of a mortgage payment, because a mortgage premium, because they're going to have to pay a PMI and all that kind of stuff. Their rent from 2 units, if they rent both the units out, their rent is going to be about $3,400, right? So even if they move out of the property, even at today's higher interest rates, which the interest rates are high, they're going to have a $3,100 payment, and they're going to be getting $3,400 after they move out, right? If they're staying in the property, half of their payments are being covered, a little bit more than half, are being covered by the other tenant, right? So regardless, this is a pretty good deal. Now, on the back end, here's the difference. So if they invest $295 in the property, right? This is their total investment in the property. The back end value on this, which is the ARV on this property, right? The ARV on the property, I think, is going to come in somewhere around $320. That's going to be the ARV on this particular property, right? So after they buy it, they rehab the property, they're going to have a very, 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 very small amount of equity in this particular property. They're not going to have a lot of equity in this particular property. So I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. So do I like this property? Yes. I think this is an excellent property for them, and 100%, they should buy this property, except they have another option. Now, when they looked at this property, they basically got scared, because they're like, oh my God, it's $388, right? It's a lot of money. We're not sure, because this number may even go to $400, right? But if I look at the same number, so before I get into the PITI versus rent, here's why I like this property more. The reason why I like this property more, because even if they overrun their budget a little bit, even if they go to 400, 410, the value on this property on the back end is somewhere around 520, if not higher, because this location is a really, really, really strong location. And here, your rents are absolutely amazingly high, right? The rents are really, really, really strong. So when I look at the single family property, is that a bad deal? No, not necessarily. It's not a bad deal. But if better is possible, this one is better. But I think this one is a better deal. So let me go through the numbers. So on this particular property, their PITI, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, ends up being $39.52, right? $39.52 is their PITI. Now, as far as their rent is concerned, it's a three-unit property, so they're going to get about $2,200 on each unit, right? This is each unit, they'll get about $2,200 to $2,100. So that even if we say on the top unit, they'll get 22 for sure. Middle unit, they'll get at least, let's just say 21. So that's 4,100. And they're going to live temporarily in the basement one. But if they rent that one out, so 4,100 plus another 1,600, how much is that? 5,700. The cash flow on this, their total rent collected on this one would be $5,700, right? So even though the payment here is quite a bit higher, than this one, because here the other issue is the taxes are a lot higher. Why the taxes are a lot higher? Because the area is much better, right? So because the area is much better, so out of the three options, number one option, I said, oh, you could have done it, but I think it's better to pass on that one and just collect a little bit of a wholesale fee. On the second one, this is a great option, but not if you have option number three available. And their concern was this. Their concern was the other day when we did the meeting here at the office, we were talking about this, right? That they're like, well, just based on our income, we're not sure if we're going to qualify for $4,000 in rent. Right now, the way it sits, in a rental property right now, they're paying $2,400 a month or $2,500 a month in monthly rent, right? So they can afford it, meaning can they get away with that? Sure. Both of them together, they make good money. But they were concerned that they weren't sure if they'll qualify. Now, here's the cool part about it. Because this is a 3-unit building, what happens is the income from the building will be a part of their qualifications because they already have some income. So they qualify for a mortgage for sure, right? But the income from the building helps them. So even though they're buying a more expensive building, that is a better building for them to buy. Why? Because so it's not always cheaper is not always better. What you have to look at when you're investing is that, hey, what is the net bottom line? In this building, if they move out every single month, they're going to make about $1,400. They're not going to make exactly $1,700. I know the difference between here and here looks $1,700, but you're going to have some expense for utilities in this particular building. So I'm accounting for that already, right? Because this is a big, nice boiler system. Lot of this building over here has been updated at one point. So what had happened was, at one point, the basement basically got the sump pump went out. The basement got water. The insurance company paid out a huge settlement on that, and so the previous owner basically had this completely done. The problem is right now the previous owner has not been making payments. So they basically had gotten a forbearance during Corona. So the basement was done about 4 years ago, right? That's when the boiler system, a new boiler system was put in. A lot of those kind of things were done. So it's actually in good condition. But there were some things that were not done. Right? They did most of the work and then they left all of it. Then they left the rest of it. So what's happened is the village in this particular case, the particular town, they're basically really on the owner's back that they won't let him rent out the other two unless he gets a couple of the permits passed. In this case, it's kind of a sweet deal because these guys have their dad's brother happens to be a plumber and he can get few of those things that they want done because that was really the big issue, and the estimates he was getting was really, really huge. So they have a couple of nice little sweet spots where they can really maximize the value, get those properties rented, get it all squared away, and this property makes a lot more sense. This particular owner is going to lose the property, and it's going to end up being basically, right now we're helping them try to get the property as a short sale. So rather than it going to the auction, because if it goes to the auction right now, this property is gone. Boom, it's gone, right? And the reason it's a short sale is not because the property is in a bad condition, because in good condition, this property sells $520 all day long. The reason why it's a short sale is because I told them that, hey, whatever all the issues are, all the stop work orders, all this kind of stuff that the village sent you, take that and send it to the lender and say, oh my God, there's all these problems. There's all these issues. Now, if you can resolve it easily, that's fine. That's your skill set. That's why you're getting such a sweet little building in such a good location, because you can solve the problems. But when you're negotiating with the lender, you have to be much more exaggerated that, oh my God, this is such a big issue. Oh, wow, how are we going to overcome this? Blah, 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 blah. Because you want to work out the best deal possible. So in this particular case, right, this building makes a lot of sense. And this is a property that they can get the seller to give them about 4.5-5% towards seller credit backs, because they're basically paying enough for the building. And the bank is willing to go along with it. That's the sweet part. The lender on the seller side is willing to go along with it because there was a forbearance for all this time on this building. He was behind to begin with. He used the corona excuse after that. Then it's all this stuff. Now he has to start paying again, and he's not doing that. Hence, they basically scheduled it for an auction. So this particular property, in this case, it's a 3-unit building. This will be a phenomenal property for them. And they walk in with well in excess of $100,000 in equity, and one property every single month will make them in excess of $1,400. So sometimes smaller is not better in this particular case. Generally, a smaller property is more manageable. In this case, because they're in a unique situation, they can do a house hack, they can do a couple, 2 or 3 things with this particular property. This is a property 100%. If I had found it, I will buy it 100%. This particular property, which is the 2-unit property, the single family property over there, I would not buy it because that's a CC minus area. I'm not going to buy in those areas. That's just me, but I wouldn't buy it. This particular area, I'm not going to buy this one either because I don't have enough equity in this property and the cash flow is not strong. So those 2 I would pass on. Now, just because I pass on something doesn't mean, if you're watching this, that it doesn't mean that it's not a good property for you. So it's going to depend on who you are, where you are in terms of investing, and it's going to kind of depend on some of those factors. So hopefully that makes sense. I just thought that was such a great example because it's so nice, and it encompasses so many different things that we talk about. So I thought I would just show it to everybody. So hopefully that whole thing makes sense, and hopefully they're going to close soon, and it'll be really exciting for us to be able to congratulate them on that. Now, let's deal with a couple other questions. In regards with, and today we're dealing with most of the house hacking things since we're talking about this example. In regards with house hacking, when you're getting a conventional loan at 5% targeting multifamily, it was mentioned that the bank will accept you for a loan as long as the rents collected as long as the rents collected covered your personal income. So I think what they're trying to say is this, that when you're buying a 2-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit property, or when you're buying a property as a house hack, right? What is a house hack? House hack is, let's say you're buying a 3-unit building, 1, 2, and 3, right? When you're buying this multi-unit building as a house hack, meaning you're going to move in one and the rest of it is going to be rented out. So you're going to have income on it. So let's just say, hypothetically, you have $2,000 income here. You have another $2,000 income here. So what that means is you have a total of $4,000 in income, right? Now, of the $4,000, you take 75% of that number. 4,000 times 0.75, right? So 4,000, 0.75. So 3,000 of this income can be counted towards payments towards this building. So let's say this building, you're buying the building for 500,000, right? And you're not going to, just based on your personal income, you won't get approved for 500. You're only approved for, say, 250 or 300, whatever your income qualifies for, so, which is fine. So that can't buy the building, but because there is future income from tenants, then you will be able to qualify for that. So that was the question, is that you will actually be able to rent the units while you are. So they're saying, is this based on the future tenants, or is it based on what you're actually able to rent the unit for a while? So this is, and then this person further asked the question, they're like, well, what about when you buy the property, are you using a hard money loan? So when you're buying this particular type of property, right, you're not using hard money loan. When you're basically buying a property like this, especially when it needs work, you're using a 203K loan, which is a product, which is basically a government loan for a residential property, and they'll give you money to rehab the property also. So you're not going to use a hard money loan in this particular case. If you're doing a hack, you use a hard money loan generally, right? Whenever you're only doing it for investment purposes, that's it. If you're going to move in, I'm not sure why you would want to do a hard money loan as step one, and then you'd have to do a refinance out of that short-term hard money loan. It wouldn't make sense in a lot of cases. Sometimes you'll do that because if you already have a place to live, already living there, and then you're just going to buy the property. Like say for me, if I'm buying a multi-unit building like this, right, then I'm just going to buy it with a hard money loan, or I'm going to pay cash with my own money, or I'm going to use private money, right? But I won't be able to do a 203K loan unless I'm going to move in the property. If I'm willing to go move in the property and live there for a year after fixed up, then I can do a 203K loan. I live there for a year. I meet that requirement. Now I can move out. Actually, it's not a year even. I think it's 6 months. I need to just check up on that. The other day, Jesse Byers was here from Guaranteed Rate, and he said it's 6 months. So it may be, I was under the impression a year, but there's a requirement, but it's fairly reasonable, right? It's something that a lot of us, if you want to get started this way in real estate, a lot of us can meet that requirement. So just wanted to kind of point that out a little bit for everybody, because it's just such a great way of getting started in real estate investing. It's not about how much money you have. The question becomes are you willing to put a little bit of work in? Are you willing to get a little bit creative? And this is something that is done all day long. Guys, real estate is meant for you to build wealth. The question is, are you using it correctly? Do you know how to use it? And do you know how to use it wisely? It's not just being about intelligent, right? Intelligence has to do with just your brain power. Wisdom is all-encompassing, because wisdom includes experience included with intelligence. So you think 5, 6, 10, 12 steps ahead. Intelligence is just being clever. Is one thing, but what you want to be wise, where you're looking at a long sort of thing, so that you understand all effect. So hopefully that makes sense. Enjoyed having you with us today on the live. Hopefully this was a 3-part example. Step 1 was about a single family. Step 2 was a 2-unit. Step 3 was about a 3-unit property. For these particular people, single family would have worked. I don't think it's the right thing for them to buy. Fortunately, they're not buying it. They're on a wholesale. I think they're making $9,500. Number 2, the 2-unit would have been a decent place for them to start. Not a bad property. I wouldn't personally buy it. Single family, the first one, I wouldn't touch it for sure, 100%, right? Just because the location. For the 2-unit, I personally would not buy it because not enough equity in the particular property and not enough cash flow. And the location is decent, right? It's not actually definitely better than the single family. But the third one, it makes 100% sense for them. That's the one they should go with for sure, right? No questions asked. And that is a property I would personally buy, because I think the location is good. I think the tenant pool is phenomenal. There's lots of equity in the property. Their DCR will hit, debt coverage ratio. And they're able to do it as a house hack. So they can have basically their cake and the icing and eat it too. So it's a pretty sweet deal for them. And close, have everything. Hopefully we'll get to celebrate with them on one of these lives. Having said that, guys, make sure you remember that if you're watching this, if you're part of Mastery, or if you're somebody who's new watching these lives, the 3-day event is November 17th, 18th, and 19th. We had, I think, 10 or 11 VIP tickets left. Rest, everything is already sold out 100%. So make sure, if you want to go as a VIP, that you register right away. It's Andrew Holmes, Andrew Holmes, Holmes, events.com, andrewholmesevents.com. Go there, say, hey, I want to go VIP. I want to be able to have the lunches with all the panelists, all the guests, everybody that you meet there, because that is important. If you just want to go there as a regular attendee, I think we're already at 400 something, and we have a total of I think the room limit is 600 tickets, so we will be running out fairly soon. So having said that, thanks a bunch, and we will talk to you on Wednesday. Keep sending us questions. If you're doing something fun, exciting, if you get value out of it, please let us know. It always helps to have that feedback from you. Having said that, thanks a bunch, and have a good day.